We don't need you here." That was the first line in the message from my daughter-in-law, and it sliced through the quiet of my kitchen like cold air from an open door. For a moment, I just stared at the screen, my thumb hovering above the reply button, my breath caught somewhere high in my chest. I could feel something settling in me, something heavy and familiar, the kind of hurt that doesn't shout, it just sinks. I had been standing by the stove, warming cider for myself, a small ritual I'd kept since my boys were little. Christmas morning was supposed to feel warm, even if the house was quiet now. I had a tin of ginger cookies cooling on the counter, the kind Nora once pretended to enjoy. I had wrapped a small stack of gifts the night before. Nothing extravagant, just thoughtful little things I knew Ethan liked. I imagined I would drive over later, slip inside, help set the table like always. Then another message came in. "If you still want to come today, you can wash the dishes. We're cooking, so you might as well make yourself useful." Useful. That word hit me harder than the rest. I didn't even need her to explain it. I had known for years how she saw me, not as family, not as someone whose presence mattered, but as hands. Quiet hands that filled in the gaps, cleaned the messes, made everything run smoother. Hands didn't need invitations. Hands didn't need warmth. Hands only needed tasks. Before I could even gather myself, Ethan's name flashed across my screen. "Mom, just go along with it. It keeps things simple. Don't make today harder than it needs to be." Harder for who? He didn't say. He didn't have to. There was a sting beneath every letter, sharper than I expected, and it wasn't new. It had been growing for years. Small comments, little corrections, moments where my existence seemed to inconvenience the rhythm of their household. I'd brush crumbs from the counter and hear Nora say, "You don't have to hover." I'd bring a pie she once loved and watch her slide it aside for a store-bought option instead. I'd arrive early to help and be handed a dish towel as if that was my role, the only contribution expected of me. But today was different. Make yourself useful wasn't a slip of the tongue. It was the truth spoken plainly without the soft edges they used to hide behind. And the worst part, Ethan agreed. My son, who used to tug on my sleeve and ask me to stay longer, now wanted me there only if I came to work. I felt a slow burn rise in my chest, not loud, not explosive, just steady. A quiet realization, almost like a whisper. They don't see you. Not really. I set my phone down on the counter, palms flat, taking in the sight of my own reflection in the stainless steel kettle. Tired eyes, silver-streaked hair, pulled into a loose bun. A woman who had bent so far for her family, she didn't even realize she'd been shrinking. For years, I'd told myself the little slights didn't matter, that I was imagining things, that a good mother stayed quiet, stayed helpful, stayed involved no matter how cold the welcome felt. But this time, something inside me refused to settle back into silence. My phone buzzed again. Nora. "So, are you coming or not?" My chest tightened, not in fear, but in recognition. The feeling reminded me of walking out into winter air after too many hours indoors. Sharp, real, awakening. I typed slowly. "I won't be coming today." I stared at the words, amazed at how true they felt. I expected my hands to shake, but they didn't. I expected regret to hit immediately, but it didn't come. Instead, another message did. "Are you serious? Mom, don't start this now. You're being dramatic. You always do this. Fine, if you stay home, that's on you. We tried." Each new message felt like a reminder of every time they'd treated me like a footnote, as if setting a single boundary turned me into the problem, as if their disappointment mattered more than my dignity. The phone kept buzzing, a steady, irritating vibration that felt almost desperate. But the longer it went on, the calmer I became. Their messages sounded the same, repeating themselves in a loop, as if guilt might change my mind, as if I would fall back into the pattern they preferred. Silent, accommodating, predictable. But something in the air had shifted. Or maybe something in me had. I walked to the living room window, watching gentle snow settle on my porch railing. Cars hummed faintly in the distance. Christmas lights blinked softly across the neighborhood, warm and peaceful, untouched by the chaos happening inside my phone. For a moment, I pressed my palm against the cold glass, grounding myself. I realized how many holidays I'd spent standing just like this, waiting for someone to tell me where to be, what to bring, how to help, waiting for the warmth of family that never quite reached me. And here, in my quiet little house, with ginger cookies cooling and cider warming, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: control. Not loud or triumphant, just steady, like the first step onto solid ground after walking on thin ice for too long. I picked up my phone one last time, not to respond, but to turn it off. The silence that followed was immediate, like someone finally closed a door that had been banging in the wind. I breathed out slowly. For the first time on a Christmas morning, I wasn't rushing, I wasn't serving, I wasn't shrinking. I was simply here. And somehow, that felt like the beginning of something I had needed for far too long. I heard the knock long before I reached the door. A steady, professional rhythm. Not family, not a neighbor, not anyone who expected warmth on the other side. For a moment, I just stood there, feeling the quiet of my house settle around me. My phone was still turned off, lying face down on the table like it was in timeout. Part of me wondered if I should ignore the knock altogether, but something told me I shouldn't. When I opened the door, a courier stood on the porch, bundled up against the cold with a stiff smile and a leather satchel tucked under his arm. "Ma'am," he said, confirming my name before handing me a thick envelope. Signature required. His tone was clipped, polite and detached, which felt like a welcome contrast to the messages I had escaped earlier. I signed, thanked him, and closed the door behind me. The envelope felt heavier than it looked, the kind of weight that makes you pause before opening it. I sat at the kitchen table where the last traces of hurt still lingered from that morning. I could almost hear Nora's voice as if she stood behind me. "Make yourself useful." Even now, those words pressed into my chest like a thumbprint that wouldn't fade. Ethan telling me not to make the day harder, as if I had ever been the one who caused trouble. The resentment simmered again, not loud, just steady, the way something long ignored rises to the surface when everything else goes quiet. I opened the envelope slowly, half expecting something ordinary. A tax notice, maybe paperwork I had forgotten to update, but inside was a set of documents printed on thick cream-colored paper, each page stamped with gold lettering. My eyes caught the name at the top, Renata Richter. It took me a second to remember where I knew it from. Then it came back to me. A woman from years ago, someone I had helped during a difficult time, never expecting anything in return. The packet included a letter from a law office in Zurich explaining that Renata had passed away earlier in the year. She had left behind a property in Lucerne, a villa overlooking the lake, worth more than I could wrap my mind around. And she had chosen me as her beneficiary, not just the villa, a monthly trust as well, for life. I pressed my fingertips against the edge of the table because the room suddenly didn't feel steady. I read it once. Twice, a third time. With each line, the reality sank deeper, and for a moment, I didn't breathe at all. It felt unreal, not because of the money, but because someone somewhere had remembered me with kindness. Someone valued me enough to leave a piece of their life in my hands. The contrast to what I had heard this morning was so stark it almost hurt. Another letter rested beneath the legal pages, handwritten in Renata's careful looping script. She thanked me for the compassion I offered her many years ago when she had no one. She wrote that I treated her with dignity when she felt invisible. She wrote that she hoped the villa would become a place where I could finally rest and live without fear of being pushed aside. I felt warmth rise in my chest, not tears exactly, but something close. A softness I had forgotten. Then my phone buzzed sharply from the Counter. I had turned it on without realizing it. The screen lit up immediately with a flood of notifications. "Mom, answer us. This isn't funny. Why are you acting like this? You're ruining the holiday. Just come wash the dishes." Wash the dishes. After all these years. Even now, even in the middle of their panic, that was what they circled back to. My usefulness. Not my feelings. Not my presence. Just what I could do for them. For a moment, resentment rose again, sharp, not because they messaged, but because every word showed they didn't understand what they had done. They didn't even think they had done anything wrong. They believed my place was wherever they needed me, whenever they needed me, and if I dared to step out of that box, I became the problem. I let the phone buzz until it stopped. Then I turned it off again. The decision settled in me so easily it surprised me. I fetched my small suitcase from the closet, the one I used only for short trips. I folded simple clothes, nothing fancy, nothing special. The documents sat on the table as I moved around the house, and each time I glanced at them, something inside me straightened. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. At the airport, the announcements echoed overhead, and people rushed past me with their suitcases bumping against the tile. I walked at my own pace, calm in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. My boarding pass looked unreal in my hand. Zurich, one way. As the plane taxied down the runway and the city lights blurred into the night, I leaned my head back and breathed. I wasn't running away from them. I wasn't trying to get revenge. I was simply going where kindness was waiting. For once, I wasn't the one reaching out, trying to earn space in someone else's life. I was choosing my own. The moment I stepped out of the airport in Zurich, the cold air hit my face in a way that felt almost cleansing. Sharp, real. Nothing like the stale warmth of the kitchen where Nora's messages still echoed in the back of my mind. A driver holding a small sign with my name greeted me politely, and for the first time in a long while, someone looked at me with respect instead of impatience. I followed him to the car, watching the mountains rise in the distance like something out of a postcard I never thought I'd see in person. The drive to Lucerne felt unreal. The road curved alongside the lake, the water calm and reflective, the sky pale with early light. I kept looking out the window, afraid I would blink and wake up back in my house with my phone buzzing, reminding me to help with chores no one else wanted to do. A strange mix of relief and resentment stirred in me. Relief that I was far away from the familiar hurt, yet resentment that I had spent so many years believing that was all I deserved. When we reached the villa, I just stood there for a moment. The house wasn't flashy. It wasn't loud or overwhelming. It was elegant, warm, and welcoming, everything I had never been allowed to feel in my own family in recent years. Ingrid, the housekeeper, stepped outside to greet me. Her smile was gentle, and her voice carried a warmth I felt instantly. "Welcome home," she said. Home. The word caught me off guard. I wasn't used to hearing it without conditions attached. Inside, the air smelled faintly of pine and citrus. The floors gleamed softly, and sunlight poured through wide windows that overlooked the lake. It felt like stepping into a life I didn't know I was allowed to have. Klaus, the estate manager, joined us quietly, offering a handshake and a respectful nod. Both of them seemed to know who I was. Not as someone who washed dishes in exchange for a seat at the table, but as someone who mattered. They showed me to a study filled with letters and journals Renata had written over the years. She had prepared everything long before her passing. There were instructions, memories, and notes addressed specifically to me. One letter lay on the desk, waiting. I opened it with careful hands. "My dear, you spent so much of your life giving," she wrote. "This time, receive. Live loudly. Stop living small. Be magnificent." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I had never heard words like that from anyone, not from Ethan, not from Nora, especially not from Nora, whose every instruction made me feel smaller, invisible. My chest tightened as I remembered the mornings I spent helping them clean up after their parties, the holidays where I arrived early and left last, the subtle looks Nora gave me whenever I tried to join a conversation. It was always clear I was welcome to work, but rarely welcome to belong. I traced my fingers over Renata's handwriting and felt something shift inside me. Something long dormant. Something that made my shoulders straighten. But my phone wasn't done with me. When I powered it on, it vibrated nonstop. Dozens of messages, missed calls, voice recordings. "Mom, why would you leave? You're being unfair. You made today so awkward. Nora is upset. You owe her an apology. Where are you?" Each word piled onto the old hurt, pushing hard against that place where resentment lived. They didn't ask if I was okay. They didn't say they missed me. They didn't even acknowledge their part in any of it. They were upset because I hadn't played my role. I sat on the edge of the bed, reading message after message, and for a moment my hands went cold. It reminded me of something I had buried decades ago, the day my own father told me I shouldn't expect much from life. "Don't act like you deserve anything special," he had said when I told him I wanted to travel someday. The same message, spoken in different voices. Nora's version was prettier, wrapped in modern politeness, but it meant the same thing. Don't dream, don't hope, don't ask for more. I could have responded. I could have told them what they did wrong, listed every moment they made me feel small, but I chose silence. Not out of fear, but out of clarity. Sometimes silence is the only thing that shows you've finally learned your worth. I placed the phone face down and left it that way. Ingrid appeared a few minutes later with a camera. An old Leica wrapped in soft cloth. "Renata wanted you to have this," she said. She used it to capture the moments that mattered to her. I held the camera with both hands. It felt warm, almost alive. I stepped out onto the balcony, lifted it, and snapped a picture of the lake. The click echoed softly in the cold air. And something strange happened. I posted the picture online, something I rarely did. Within minutes, people responded. Old friends, distant relatives, even strangers who simply found the view beautiful. They wrote things like, "This is stunning," and "Where are you?" and "You look peaceful." For the first time in years, people saw me, not for what I could do, but simply for who I was. I stayed on the balcony until the sun dipped behind the mountains. The sky turned a soft blue, and the air smelled clean, untouched. Down below, the lake reflected the fading light. I wasn't sure what tomorrow would bring. I didn't know how Ethan would react when he realized I wasn't coming home anytime soon. But standing there, wrapped in quiet, I knew this much. For the first time in my life, I wasn't living small. I wasn't waiting to be included. I wasn't trying to earn love by becoming useful. I was finally choosing myself. The call started early in the morning, long before the sun reached the balcony outside my room. I let the phone ring the first few times, hoping the sound would stop on its own. It didn't. Nora's voice came through first, sharp and controlled, the way she always sounded when she was trying to hide irritation under politeness. "Where exactly are you?" she demanded the moment I picked up. She didn't say hello. She didn't ask if I was all right. "You left everyone worried. Ethan can't focus. The kids are confused. You should have told us before disappearing." The word disappearing made something tighten inside my chest. I hadn't disappeared. I simply walked away from a door they kept trying to close in my face. Before I could say anything, she continued, "You can't just run off like this. It's causing problems. Ethan had to explain to his parents why you weren't at Christmas. They think something is wrong with you." There it was again, the same tone she always used when she wanted to remind me of my place. Each word felt like another reminder of how small she thought I should be. I felt the resentment rise slowly, a steady burn. For years, I had swallowed my feelings when she talked to me that way, thinking it wasn't worth starting anything. But now, with the Swiss air coming through my window and the weight of Renata's letters still fresh in my mind, it all hit differently. "Nora," I said quietly. "I didn't disappear. I chose not to be treated the way you were treating me." She exhaled sharply. "Here we go. You always make things dramatic. We were trying to include you. You just took it the wrong way." Include me by telling me to wash the dishes. Include me by making my presence a chore instead of a welcome. My resentment grew deeper at her wording, at the way she twisted everything to make herself sound fair. It reminded me of all the times she brushed off my hurt with a joke or a sigh, when she told me I was too sensitive, when she corrected how I folded towels, when she told Ethan I was set in my ways, when she acted as if I were a guest in the family I helped raise. "I won't talk about this with you," I said finally. "If Ethan wants to talk, he can call me himself." She laughed under her breath. "Do you really think he's going to choose you over his own wife? Be reasonable." That line struck hard. It was the same thing she always wanted. For me to doubt myself, doubt my place, doubt my worth. But something in me had changed. I wasn't standing in their kitchen anymore. I wasn't waiting for their approval. I stood in a home where someone had valued me enough to give me an entire life to rebuild. "I'm done explaining myself to you," I said. "This conversation is over." I ended the call before she could respond. The phone rang again almost immediately. This time it was Ethan. His voice was shaken, not angry, more confused than anything. "Mom, what's going on?" he asked. "Nora says you snapped at her. Why didn't you come to Christmas? Why are you acting like this?" Every question was framed as if the problem started with me, as if years of being treated like background noise didn't matter, as if I had changed out of nowhere. The resentment hit again, sharp and steady. "You never asked how I felt when she spoke to me," I said. "Not once. You only react when she feels upset." He went quiet. I could hear him breathing, the hesitation, the gears turning. He didn't defend her immediately. That was new. But when he spoke, he shifted the blame again. "I just want things to go back to normal," he said. Normal. Normal meant doing chores when asked. Normal meant showing up early and leaving last. Normal meant accepting whatever scraps of kindness they offered. Normal meant being treated like an afterthought. "No," I said, my voice steady. "I'm not going back to that." I could feel the emotional twist as the silence stretched. It reminded me of the day I left home at 18, after my father had told me I wasn't meant for anything more than helping others succeed. His words had stayed with me for years, and hearing Ethan echo those same patterns, without even realizing it, brought the old hurt back in a way I hadn't expected. "Mom," he said carefully, "can we talk in person? Please? Just tell me where you are." "You can come," I said, "but you must come alone." His surprise came through the phone. "Without Nora?" "Yes, if you want to see me, you come alone." There was another long silence. Then he whispered, "Okay." After we hung up, the phone buzzed again. Nora this time, furious. "You cannot control who he brings. You're being unreasonable. You're dividing the family. This is unacceptable." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Ingrid found me on the balcony a few minutes later, staring out at the calm lake. She didn't ask questions. She simply placed a warm cup of tea beside me and said, "Some people only value you when you stay small. You're not small anymore." I felt the truth of that settle into me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't begging for a place at the table. I was choosing who to let into my life. Ethan arrived on a gray morning, the clouds hanging low over the lake like the sky wasn't sure whether to brighten or keep the world quiet. I saw him through the window before he reached the door, shoulders slumped, hands shoved into his jacket pockets, walking slower than I'd ever seen him walk. For a moment, I just watched him, trying to understand how the same boy who once clung to my hand at every school entrance had become a man who let someone else decide how I should be treated. When I opened the door, he looked up with tired eyes. "Mom," he said softly, almost afraid of the sound of his own voice. There was no Nora behind him, no shadow of her influence, just Ethan, older, humbled, and unsure. A part of me wanted to hug him right away, but the memory of every message he'd sent under Nora's tone of authority pulled at me. It reminded me why I had pulled away in the first place. He stepped inside, glancing around at the villa as though he wasn't sure he was allowed to be there. "This place is beautiful," he whispered. "It is," I answered. "Sit, Ethan. We need to talk." He followed me to the living room, taking a seat on the edge of the couch like a guest instead of a son. The distance between us felt heavy. I let the silence stretch long enough for the truth to settle. Finally, he spoke. "Nora is angry. She says you're trying to break our family apart. She thinks you're punishing us." The resentment I thought I had left behind flickered again. Punishing them? After everything they had said? After the way they reduced me to chores and errands? After telling me I had made Christmas harder by refusing to work? I steadied myself before answering. "Ethan, you let her talk to me in ways you never should have. I wasn't family to her. I was someone she expected to work without question." He closed his eyes and pressed his hands together. "I know," he said, voice cracking a little. "And I'm sorry, I didn't see it at first. But when she found out I came alone, she yelled for an hour. She told me I should have stayed home, that I should have chosen her." "And what did you say?" He looked up at me, guilt heavy in his expression. "I said I wasn't choosing anyone. I just needed to understand you, Mom. I needed to see you. I should have done that sooner." His words knocked the breath out of me. For so long, I'd waited for him to look past Nora's voice, past the dynamic she controlled, and finally see the quiet ways I'd been pushed aside. Hearing him admit it now brought an ache to my chest I didn't expect. Not anger this time, but the sting of too many years lost. I took a slow breath. "Ethan, I'm not angry that you married her. I'm angry that you let her shape the way you treated me. She spoke to me like I was someone who needed instructions, not respect, and you let it happen." He nodded, tears gathering in his eyes. Seeing him emotional didn't erase the hurt, but it softened the corners of it. This man in front of me wasn't the voice behind those messages. He was the boy I raised, struggling to untangle himself from someone else's influence. "I want a relationship with you," I said firmly, "but it has to be on clear terms." He leaned forward, waiting. I held up 3 fingers. "First, you don't speak for me. You don't explain what I meant or what I feel. I'll say my own words." He nodded. "Second, you don't allow anyone, not even your wife, to speak to me like I'm beneath them. If she can't be respectful, she doesn't get access to me." He swallowed hard but agreed. "And third, you're honest. Not just when it's easy, when it's hard too." He took a long breath, wiped his eyes, and said, "I can do that. I want to do that. I'm sorry, Mom. Truly." I didn't rush to forgive him. Instead, I reached out and placed my hand over his. "We can start again," I said. Slowly. For the first time in years, he smiled without tension in his eyes. We moved to the kitchen where Ingrid had set out tea and bread. The 3 of us sat at the table, and Ethan told stories about his childhood, ones I thought he'd forgotten. He laughed softly at memories of simpler days, running through sprinklers, school projects, nights he fell asleep on my shoulder watching movies. For a while, it felt like time had folded back on itself. When his phone buzzed, he looked down, saw Nora's name, and turned it off without hesitation. That small gesture, so simple, so quiet, meant more to me than any apology he could give. We stood together on the balcony afterward, the lake spreading out in front of us like a promise of something new. Ethan leaned on the railing and whispered, "I don't know what happens next, but I want us to be all right." "We will be," I said. He stayed until the afternoon, and when he hugged me goodbye, it wasn't rushed or distracted. It was full, real, the kind of embrace I hadn't felt from him in years. After he left, the villa was quiet again, peaceful. I walked into Renata's study, opened the window, and let the cool air in. The lake shimmered as if someone ran a gentle brush across the surface. I stood there a long time, letting the stillness settle in my bones. If you're listening to this, remember something important. It's never too late to choose yourself. And sometimes, the moment you finally do, the world opens in ways you never expected.